Welcome to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. On a Wednesday, a hump day. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have a terrific show planned for you today. Brooklyn Nets star Spencer Dinwiddie is going to stop by. We're going to get into it with Spencer. Got some good questions for him about the NBA's future and his unique approach to business. Also, Fox Sports football analyst Brock Huard's going to join us. We'll talk about whether AB is a good fit with the Seattle Seahawks. But we're going to start today with a very serious and heavy topic, and we're going to bring in LeVar Arrington to help us address it. Athletes and celebrities across the country have been chiming in on the latest incident of police brutality to grab our attention over social media and in the mainstream media. LeBron James has put out a message over Instagram. Do you understand now, or is it still blurred to you? Stay woke. There was a picture of Colin Kaepernick kneeling with his Instagram post, along with a picture of the police officer, I don't know his name, don't really care to know his name, who put his knee on the neck of George Floyd for, I believe, more than 7 minutes, and the man ended up dying. Many other athletes, from Odell Beckham Jr. to DeMarcus Lawrence, a lot of celebrities, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, have all chimed in on this issue. I've been asked many questions over social media. What my take is on this. I've had a unique outlook compared to others over social media because I've been forced to have a unique outlook on this. As I've written about and have shared on this television show, in May of 2012, my cousin, Anton Butler, was killed in Indianapolis by what we believe was police misconduct. He was tasered and killed in the rain by sheriff's officers. A devastating impact on my family. In order of fairness, the police have a story that they believe justifies their actions. The coroner blamed it on cocaine. My family, and we believe something else. Anton Butler, one of the greatest human beings God ever created, was taken from us at age 28. This issue has resonated with me before Anton Butler, but Anton is someone that I helped raise, that spent many summers with me in Kansas City, and at age 28 was taken from me. And it's made me move beyond outrage. And it's made me try to examine why this issue won't go away and move more towards solution and how we can improve things. And I'm just not someone that's caught up in social media outrage. I'm someone caught up in how I and others can promote a conversation that improves this situation and moves us towards solutions rather just an emotional outburst when these things happen. I don't want to denigrate any of the people posting social media outrage about this issue. I get it. I'm not sure if it's the most effective way to move us forward and promote a conversation that gets us someplace where we're actually seeing improvement. We've been having this discussion publicly in the media at least since 1991 and Rodney King. I'm not sure if things have gotten better. And so part of my solution and part of the things I've tried to argue to people and try to present to people is we are making a mistake, I believe, a lot of Black people with platforms, of trying to define police brutality as a Black problem. It is a societal problem. And as a journalist and as a columnist, my job throughout my entire career has been, how do I put together arguments that persuade people who disagree with me to see things from my point of view? And when you limit this discussion and try to make it just a Black problem, human nature, all human nature, regardless of your color, people are concerned about things that impact them. They're not concerned about things that don't impact them. And if we would broaden the discussion and just follow the facts, we would understand police brutality is a societal issue that impacts us all. There are stats that are easily available on the internet anywhere that will show you that in terms of police shootings and police killings, more white people get killed than black people. I believe since 2017 through 2019, on average, 408 white people have been shot and killed by police, as opposed to 222 black people per year. I think it's a mistake to racialize the discussion and just go for outrage when the more effective strategy would be to broaden the discussion and explain to people that police brutality impacts all of us, and there needs to be a discussion about what we can do to reduce this from ever happening. I think anybody that, and we're not showing the video, a lot of people are not, I've watched the video of what happened to George Floyd. It is terrifying. It is disgusting. I think if you take a mature look at this and evaluate it, this officer clearly has an indifference to human life and a level of lack of respect for human life that is frightening. There are actual human beings pleading with him to stop. The man is begging for his life. And this police officer has a look of indifference and brutality and just that is just hard to understand. I don't think what happened to George Floyd here is a controversial or hard thing for people to wrap their brains around, that the policemen here and the policemen that did nothing in reaction are all criminally wrong, in my opinion. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, but I think most people would come to that conclusion, and we can have a discussion about what happened with George Floyd and others of all races. This video is the most terrifying thing I've seen, other than 4 or 5 years ago when we were having this discussion. I saw a video of police officers in a hotel execute a man in the hallway. It's all on video. And it was a white man that they executed and shot for no reason. And it moved me like, oh my God. George Floyd's the only thing I've seen that has topped that. And I would just ask for athletes, and this is a discussion we're going to have, athletes, sports has been a tool to bring us together, to help us see our common interest across racial, economic lines. And I think there's going to be more protests when sports come back, but I'm asking athletes to protest and voice your opinions in a way that brings more people into the discussion and allows more people to see the point of view rather than going at it in a racially polarizing way. I'm going to stop here and let Marcellus and LeVar join in. Marcellus, I'll start with you. Do you expect when sports come back, when full sports come back, that we're going to see more protests moving forward from athletes?
Absolutely. I expect that, and they should protest. In the same respect that you talked about your cousin and you talked about him affectionately, that humanized that incident, that personalized that incident for all of us who are not connected to you or your cousin. And I think the athletes understand that power and that magnitude of power where they, once they protest, will also activate others and humanize their story and them dealing with the consequences of what we're talking about. Why do athletes, and like you said, why make it something where it can be deemed divisive? Why put it into a black and white conversation? The aggregate numbers would suggest that white people have a problem with police brutality and police crimes, but in proportion, the disproportionate number that it affects the African-American community is why these athletes want to make this a black and white issue. And as you said, I understand in discussion, we all should be talking, but in consequence, and certainly what comes from this, it's going to affect our community more so than their community. So I expect protests, but my grander point is protest and. I want to add the and, not just to the word protest, where I think a lot of this stops. It stops with outrage. It stops with a post. It stops with a T-shirt. It stops with a gesture and just a kneeling. What about the and? And I think that's the really important part about this conversation, that I have a lighthearted example and I have a heavy example. The lighthearted example is me being a DJ. I learned a long time ago not to play my favorite songs They said, you know what, don't stay in your comfort zone. Play what moves the crowd. And you know what moves the crowd in this country? Policy. You know what moves the crowd in this country? Power. And just like right now in New York, there's a bill trying to get passed that can make false accusations like we saw in Central Park this week, make those false accusations a hate crime. So I want to tell everyone out there, after your post, after your T-shirt, after your protest, and let's affect the policy, let's affect the power, then we can have that true change. I'll give you my heavy-hearted example later.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes as well. There will be protests, and expect there to be more protests. You think about the first time around when we started talking about conversations around Kaepernick and LeBron and the rest of the NBA guys who were wearing Can't Breathe shirts, it was a shock to the system. So the fear and the outrage that was being protested and where it came from with the players doing these protests, you also scared the establishment, right? So now you have people on the other side of it that are afraid of what's taking place with these protests. Well, now it's out. Cat's out the bag. So this time around, there will be more people there. I would expect there to be more unity in it. I would actually expect there to be less backlash and outrage towards these protests because it's now a reality. The unimaginable is continuing to play out in videos, and you have the ability to take it and make it a reality now. So I see there being more protests, and I see people being more proactive or being more active off of it because there's no element of surprise this time. You're not sneaking up on anybody. We know it's coming.
I want to follow up on something Marcellus said and just add a little context from my perspective in terms of the proportionality of Black people involved with police brutality. And I hate to go here because people laugh when I reference the television show The Wire, but it's a very important television show. It was written by a former police reporter and a former Baltimore police officer, and it captured a lot of real-life perspective. And what it pointed out was the more violence in your community, the more police were sent to your community, the more policing. And so the more often you would be engaged with the police. And so as Black people, we live in major cities. Poverty is an issue for us. We live in poor communities where there is more violence. They're going to over-police those areas because mayors and other people, city council people, get elected off of crime rates and murder rates and things like that. And I say that not as an excuse, but just in the context, the more frequently you're involved with the police, the more apt you are to be harmed by police brutality. And so, again, I would just like to have a conversation because the only way there's going to be change is if more people join the conversation and start addressing the issue. And if the problem is always described as a Black issue, it's going to be very hard to get other people to engage in that issue. And I think if you look at progress across America's history, where we get progress is when we start explaining problems in a more global perspective, in a more inclusive perspective, and explain, no, this impacts you as well. The denial of our freedoms through slavery and other issues actually denied freedom and actually prevented America from reaching its full potential. Once people wrap their arms and minds around that, that's when change happens. And so all I would say, because I do expect athletes to protest, and I'm trying to be careful here and not go at people, but if you protest during the national anthem, you're not going to create a conversation about police brutality. You're going to create a conversation about protesting during the national anthem. And so I would just ask athletes to go, Marcellus said the and the and that I would like to add is strategic protest, strategic action that actually leads to the kind of changes you're looking for.
Yeah, I like the fact that you said be strategic. that highlights the course of action. And let's be respectful and real. There are many ways up that mountain. And it's not just the protest route. It's not just, okay, I'm going to look at the policy. It's that culmination effect. And let's be real about policy as well. It doesn't have to be popular with the masses. If we look through the course of history, you don't need the overwhelming majority of people and citizens to always agree what is the law, what is the new bill, what is the new policy. So just don't let that deter you in terms of making effective change that you need everyone on board. You do not. Our history books tells us that. With that said, man, you talked about The Wire, and, you know, by no choice of my own, I lived through The Wire, the Compton, Los Angeles, South Central version. And look, man, I do not glamorize any of the experiences I went through. I certainly don't feel the stripes or feel the adoration that sometimes comes my way because I survived that. I wish I never had to go through those experiences. But to stay particular to this conversation, my mindset changed as well when I was 14 years old and I got pulled over by the police, mistaken identity, and had guns drawn to my head. And those moments, those few moments where I was listening to every breath of life I had and really thinking about the finality that it could end right now as guns were on my head, guns surrounding me in a case of mistaken identity. Surviving that moment, living through that moment gave me a different perspective. And it's given me a latitude that I don't know if everyone has been privy or experienced in having. It's the fact that my grandmother told me shortly after that, you can't make sense out of nonsense. And I learned that that really helped me out in trying to survive that mentally, the post-traumatic stress that comes from that. Because I was trying to figure out why that happened to me. And I think that's what's happening right now in the outrage. People are trying to figure out, where did the basic need for human decency go? Where did the basic need for us to just care about each other beyond complexion go? And I remember my grandmother telling me, you can't make sense out of nonsense. And evil comes in many ways, in many shapes, in many forms, in many uniforms. And you have to respect that it's not all. It's not an all situation. So I understand why Jason is saying be strategic, people, because we have to be able to maneuver this properly because there are so many different obstacles out there. But let's be real. Living through that Wire experience, there's no reason why police, no matter how many encounters they have with individuals, should become desensitized to what an individual is doing in that moment. You cannot escalate these situations like we saw in that video to the point of death based on what those circumstances were. So encounters can be multiplied in the hood. I get it. But you should not be desensitized from a human being because of those experiences. So hopefully everyone can bring all that together and make change. Protest, but make sure you follow that up as well.
I want to add one last thing, and we got to get out of here. If you happen to watch the video, and I would suggest people do watch the video of George Floyd, I would suggest there's an argument to be made. If you look at the policeman whose knee is on this man's neck for, I believe, 7 minutes, anybody that thinks that that man isn't capable of being violent towards anybody is a foolish person. That type of depravity, that type of indifference to life doesn't stop at skin complexion. That's what was captured on tape. I get it. But if you really understand the police brutality and the overuse of force and the overuse of authority, again, it doesn't stop. That video shows someone indifferent to life. I'm just sorry. And I'm not trying to judge the man. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a prosecutor. But the video speaks for itself. We got to go. Brock Huard around the corner. We're going to talk about Antonio Brown perhaps joining the Seattle Seahawks. Is he a good fit for Russell Wilson? Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this.
That's my dog.
Welcome to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. All right, Marcellus, let's keep it rolling. Let's roll out to Seattle, or the Seattle area. And we're going to be joined by Fox Sports college football and NFL analyst Brock Huard. Brock, we want to talk about the Seattle Seahawks and perhaps their interest in Antonio Brown. There are reports that Russell Wilson would love for Antonio Brown to join the Seahawks. We have discussed that issue here on Speak for Yourself, and want to ask you, as someone that lives right outside of Seattle, I'm sure you follow the Seahawks, do you think Antonio Brown would be a good fit for the Seahawks and Russell Wilson?
The quarterback thinks so. I don't think the team thinks so. I think the quarterback was pretty clear down at the Pro Bowl, Jason, when he said he wanted superstars. And the Seahawks had about $70 million of cap space, had lots of draft picks. And I know that Russell sat down in his home in Southern California to Mexico and said, okay, what kind of superstars am I going to get? How am I going to compete in this division with a much better 49ers roster, an Arizona team that's better, the Rams that still have some superstars, including Aaron Donald, that attacks him every Sunday and Monday that they play. So he wanted superstars, and they didn't get it. They really didn't add many. They went a different route. They added a lot of depth on their offensive line in Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin, some guys that were productive, but certainly not superstars. They haven't even signed Jadeveon Clowney back, who continues to be on the street. So I think the quarterback wants a superstar because he knows he's in the prime of his career. He's got 3 or 4 more years in the absolute prime of his career. And while DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are phenomenal, the rest of the receiving core is pretty thin. And in one of the most difficult divisions, if not the most difficult division in all the NFL, he would love to add a superstar. I cannot imagine the Seahawks feeling the same way. I just can't see them going down that road. Quentin Dunbar, they traded for, obviously got into some legal scrapes a week ago. So they're trying to still figure that end of it out. I just can't see them making this move until Antonio Brown proves himself a good human being, a good person, and everything else before even thinking about adding him as a teammate.
I think it's worth the roll of the dice, and I think this is a great situation, not just talking about schematically and having a top-end receiver to add to their receiving core. Yeah, they drafted some depth, but in terms of cherry on top, you need an Antonio Brown, and like you said, a division where they're getting better. Every single team is going to return to the roar this year. So you have to stand pat with those guys. You have to stay pace with those teams. And that said, this is a locker room that has dealt with some personalities. You want to go as recent as Josh Gordon and his issues. No, he didn't work out on the field, but they still brought in a Josh Gordon despite the strikes on his resume. And then you talk about having a Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, and Richard Sherman in the same locker room and succeeding. You're talking about a guy who doesn't talk, a guy who says everything perfectly, and a guy who is just going to give you his peace of mind all the time. And Pete Carroll was able to deal with those latitude of emotions. So I think this is a good situation. Roll the dice. If AB acts up, like New England, get him up out of here. But there's a lot of upside to AB on your roster.
Brock, I don't have anything interesting to add to this. I'm pretty much on the record. They need to give AB some weapons. Just give me, because I'm going to bring you back on at some point, give me a 10-second take. I think Brian Schottenheimer is the wrong offensive coordinator for Russell Wilson. You say?
I say he's the perfect offensive coordinator for Pete Carroll. So, yeah, maybe not for Russell. But again, this is the tug of war. Going back and forth with a franchise quarterback at Russell's stature who wants AB, who wants some superstars. This is still a head coach and organization that says we play defense, we run the football, we win games, and have won them that way for a decade and will continue to do so.
All right, let's move to another topic. Cam Newton's still out there on the free agent market. I've been arguing on this show, and Marcellus agrees with me. Cam Newton to Dallas isn't the craziest thing to think about and ponder, particularly if they can't work out something with Dak Prescott. I'd rather go into the season with Cam Newton and Andy Dalton. But anyway, the question has been, with a lot of people, is Cam the right fit for the New England Patriots? So I want to ask you, better location for Cam Newton, Dallas or New England?
Oh, yeah. For me, that's New England. Personally, I would like to watch that more than anything else. That's totally selfish and my own personal bias. I would like to see Cam with Bill Belichick. I'd like to see him the first time he walks in with one of those outfits or one of the styles that he brings to it. And Bill says, no, go back in, change, try again. We'll do this. And he walks in with, again, a little bit more. And he's like, nope, walk right back in. So personally, that's just my own my own bias. From a football standpoint, I can't imagine Jason and Marcellus. I can't imagine Dak Prescott sitting to the sidelines and saying, yeah, I'll hold out. I think he's looking at the guy that was picked 33 picks before him in the 4th round, and Kirk Cousins, and saying, I will play it the way Kirk Cousins played it. I will bet on myself. I'm tough. I'm durable. I'm reliable. I'm not going to give Andy Dalton 1 rep at practice, let alone let Cam Newton and Andy Dalton take my job and my opportunity. So it's a 4th round pick. You never stop being a 4th round pick. Kirk Cousins never stopped being a 4th round pick. He's going to bet on himself. So I don't see that even as a viable situation. It's a fun hypothetical, but I don't see it viable. I see New England is viable, and I think that'd be a tremendous fit for Cam. I think it would speak volumes around the league. I think Cam at times was difficult to handle in Carolina. I think Ron Rivera was the perfect coach who took all those arrows and all those bullets and stood in front of everybody in that situation. I think if Cam was to go to New England, that would really resonate in the league with a lot of decision makers and a real opportunity for him to resurrect his market value.
Now, let me be quick and let me be clear. I agree with you, Brock. It's strong for Whitlock to say, I agree with him. He more led the witness. Basically tell me if there's no Dak there, would Cam Newton be better in Dallas? Yeah, there's no Dak there, but Dak will be there. Stephen Jones has been on record saying that's their franchise quarterback going forward. That said, I'm with you, Brock. Take him to New England. Let's see what happens. They already have an adoration for him, a respect for his game. Bill Belichick's been on record with that. And in the NFL, you eat what you kill. And last time I checked, Stidham has not killed anything yet. So it's not his turn to eat. Cam Newton goes there, he's the starter, and he takes them some places. Go to New England.
Brock, great job. Thank you so much. We got to keep it rolling. Spencer Dinwiddie, a star for the Brooklyn Nets with some very unique business ideas. Spencer Dinwiddie's going to join us from his crib. Spencer, my former neighbor out here in Los Angeles. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai, or after this.
That's my dog.
From the crib, presented by Hyundai, Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. All right, let's roll down to San Antonio, Texas, where we'll be joined by Brooklyn Nets star guard Spencer Dinwiddie. And we've got Spencer on because Spencer has one of the most creative, independent minds in all of sports, especially when it comes to business. And so I just want to start there. Where did this creative mind, where did that come from?
I definitely have to give all the credit on these things to my parents. They always told me, to have that free-thinking mind, that I could be anything I wanted to be. My dad's an entrepreneur, and my mom is a PhD from USC. So, two very intelligent people.
All right, so let's start with your creative mind. I think last fall, you put it out there that you would sell bonds to fans who could basically invest in your contract future. Explain to us what you were thinking there and how that concept would work.
Yeah, so I was pretty much thinking about fan engagement as a whole, and the big picture of the business is actually the secondary trading market. Like picture trading like real fantasy sports, Spencer for LeBron, for Kevin Hart, even for, a Jason Whitlock, because you are a public personality as well. So creating the full businesses around that and just using my contract as the initial basis.
Now, more recently, you started a GoFundMe with the goal of raising $24 million, and you let fans go out there and determine where you would sign your one-year contract. Please elaborate on that concept, brother.
No, so that was more fan engagement stuff. I said at 24 million because I knew we wouldn't reach it. There's certain psychology around like numbers and things. And so if you set like a unattainable goal, people are less likely to invest. And so it's more so about like showing people what's possible and then doing good for charity. That's why, if we're even a dime under our mark, that it'll all go to charity. So, we ended up raising, we had a couple people match behind the scenes. We ended up raising about $5,000 for charity. And so, I was pretty happy with it and just had a little bit of fun.
Now, interesting, because you said you throw out a number that's unattainable and then you proceed. The GoFundMe didn't raise, obviously, $24 million. It didn't go as well as planned. Does that bother you, or how does that affect your creative mind in going forward?
No, so like I said, I never really intended to raise the 24. So it was more so about like showing people what's possible, which like with a splashy number, it kind of does that. And then I also had the secondary benefit of also doing good for charity, which is, its intended purpose. So to me, that's success. And then, with like the bonds with my contract and stuff, it's actually ongoing. And, we're seeing a lot of good traction. I just can't speak too much about it because of like securities regulations, things like that. And so, you have to like talk to the broker dealer and, all the other like legalese that, go into things of that nature.
That sounds like mogul speak right there. Okay, so the NBA, your league is talking about coming back, but just for the playoffs. You tweeted out, if we go 16 teams directly to the playoffs, do those teams get paid more for the risk and carrying this year's revenue after Corona and China? Sounds like you've been playing a little baseball in your offseason, but that said, you believe they should, and why?
So it's hard to say. I was more so drawing like attention to the risks that come with this, right? If you go 16 teams directly to playoffs, you're asking guys to come back and compete at the very highest level. And, a lot of guys don't necessarily have access to gyms right now in terms of on-court work and all that stuff. So people are trying to stay in shape as best they can, but you're going to tell them to go into championship form immediately. And so there's injury risk. Then you got to couple that with, possibly being quarantined away from your family for, 2-3 months. And, there's mental health aspects to that in terms of, how people adapt and deal with that. So there's just a lot of things that go on. And we also got to remember, like, our revenue isn't only taking a hit because of the pandemic. We also had the situation in China in the preseason that hurt our revenue as a league as well. So there's just a lot of different factors. And I don't think people are necessarily looking at all the factors. Like, if we have to sign a waiver to play and waive some of our protections, I don't think that's something that a lot of NBA players are going to want to do when the pandemic isn't our fault.
Man, I applaud you because it seems like your aspirations go well beyond just being a basketball player. What are your post-career goals?
Really, once I'm done, I poured my heart and soul into this, man. Like, I've been working at being in the NBA and being a great player since I was 3. It's all I ever wanted to do. I really just kind of want to go be a dad and go back to LA and look at the water and add value to the world. That's why I do a lot of different charity stuff. But really, like, I'm going to kick it. Like, when I'm done, I'm going to be done. I've literally the 6 a.m.s, all that stuff. Like, I poured my heart and soul into this, and I want to push it as far as it can go the next, decade or half decade or whatever it is. But after that, I'm kicking it.
All right. Yeah. Clearly, Marcellus and I are really impressed by your creativity, your outspokenness, your kind of fearlessness. But how does management, coaches, management, or some of your teammates, do they ever give you pushback on some of your unique thoughts and approaches?
For my peers and teammates, not really. They talk to me, we have conversations, and so I'm able to more like explain myself. We have more of a brother bond than anything. I would say with management and stuff like that, I think I'm probably more of an acquired taste. I think, when you actually start to be around me every day and understand like where I come from, you understand that like I come from a good place, and like even all my fan engagement stuff, it's about helping the league, because that's how, the league makes money, is through the fans watching. But I can see why it could be misunderstood and why, management around the league may look at me with a side eye or something like that. It's just kind of part of the way my mind works. But, my teammates understand me, and so that's pretty much the main thing. I love all my teammates.
All right, there may be some NBA fans in Houston looking at you with a side eye. You called Kevin Durant the best scorer in the NBA. Yes. Not best player, not best scorer. James Harden isn't the best scorer in the NBA, and if so, why isn't he?
So I have a ton of respect for James. I think in terms of when you start adding in passing as well, he probably creates the most offense, the most efficiently bar none in the NBA. But when looking at a scorer and a scorer's profile, you're talking about 7'2" guard, with range out to 35 feet, maybe even 40 feet, a handle like a guard. He moves like a 6'4", 6'5" player, and he can just really do everything. So that's where I'm really coming from. He's, a 50, 40, 90 guy, pretty much in his sleep. Obviously 2 finals MVPs. So it's not a shot at James Harden at all. I think when you include passing, he's probably the best offensive creator. But the scorer specifically, in my opinion, KD's the best scorer of all time, either him or obviously Kareem. So it's right there.
Michael Jordan just rolled over in his mansion wherever he's at in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a perfect segue to this question about Last Dance. Everybody's been watching Last Dance or watched Last Dance. I'm assuming you did. What were your thoughts, impressions of Michael Jordan?
Man, there was a lot. There was a whole lot. That's actually the toughest one. I think for me, it was cool to see a little peek into like the type of competitor he was. I also obviously hear about, some of the former players being mad and things like that. And I guess it just speaks to how polarizing somebody that is that much of an alpha really is, and the length he was willing to go to win. So I would probably take inspiration, if anything.
Spencer, thank you for the time. Look forward to you coming back to L.A. And we got some new people in the building. A little crazy, but I'll tell you about it when you're back in L.A. All right, stick around. Rick Bucher,
Death Row Records,
our NBA expert. We're going to get into some NBA topics. LeBron holding group workouts during a pandemic. He says no. Some say yes. We'll get into that with Rick Bucher. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. It is Wednesday Hump Day. Let's roll out to the Bay Area and be joined by Rick Bucher, our NBA expert. All right, Rick, you got to help me get to the bottom of this. There are conflicting reports. Some people are saying LeBron's hosting group workouts here in L.A. for his L.A. teammates. The Lakers have denied it. Danny Green on Cowherd show yesterday denied it. I wouldn't have a problem if he was. It would actually be a good look, and I wouldn't blame him. But, Rick, start us out here. Would you have a problem with LeBron if he was doing this?
I would not. And we need to be, when we hear group workouts, we're thinking, 7, 8, 9 guys. We're talking about a handful, maybe 2, 3 at the most. And honestly, I really don't have a problem with it if he's not endangering anybody outside of himself or his family or those participating. Then look, sports is all about calculated risks. And I appreciate the fact that he's going to the nth degree to try to win a championship in L.A. because my feeling is if he doesn't get it done this year, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I have no problem with it as well. Look, I'm lucky enough to be in my backyard working right now. I can't be the same guy up here that says, oh, I'm upset at you for trying to do your job, trying to get your work in and get prepared for your season that's coming. So I can't be that guy. This is not even Ben Roethlisberger's situation. I had no problem with Ben in his workout. I had a problem with him going to the barber and then playing the blame game and making a mockery of that situation. I had that issue. But in terms of guys who have to go get it and they know that they're going to be on the line within a few weeks, out there expected to be at full throttle, training camp 2.0, have to go to a bubble, you have to be prepared for those moments. And as our country slowly opens up, some guys have to take that calculated risk to open up faster so they're prepared when it's full throttle.
Obviously, I don't know what's inside LeBron's house, but if there is a full court basketball court he has built in his house, I would actually be disappointed if he isn't hosting some sort of workouts. And I would actually be impressed and supportive if he was hosting 5-on-5, the 15 guys there going up and down the court and preparing. That, to me, would scream LeBron James watched Last Dance, and he wants this damn title because this may be his last chance to get a title. And I just think that group of young people, I'd spray them all down with Lysol, Clorox, alcohol, bleach, and the whole 9 yards on the way into my gym and on the way out of my gym. And I would be hosting full court practices and trying to have an advantage. If this thing does get restarted, I wouldn't blame LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Frank Vogel, Jeannie Buss, and everybody else. If Magic was out there scrimmaging with him, I wouldn't blame him for that either. Jerry West, too. Kareem, bring them all out there and try to get this championship. And I wouldn't make any apologies for it. I think it would be a great look for LeBron.
Honestly, I'd be disappointed if Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo and some of the other guys that have a shot at it aren't trying to do the same thing. As I said, there's calculated risk in sports. That's part of what this is all about. And as long as you're not endangering other people outside of it, I would hope that that's where their commitment is in terms of trying to get this done. And let's keep in mind, too, in the context of the league feels comfortable that we are clearly moving toward we are going to have games. So there's a comfort level about what we know about the virus and about what's going on right now that the feeling is we can play. We can find a way to play. And if you look at the category of who the category that these athletes fit in as far as their risk factor, all of it, I just feel like they're doing their jobs. They're attempting to do what they're paid to do, what their entire motivation is. And so pursuing that to me is honestly, I see that honorable as opposed to this looks like an opportunity for me just to kick it.
Yeah, the journalist in me is sitting here saying, as long as you do it in a social distancing measure and try to be safe, the athlete in me is like, look, I don't give a damn if it's safe or not. I know I will be judged in a month or so based on my performance and my team's performance. I am rolling the dice right now, so I'm ready for that moment, and you can judge me now if you want.
By the way, haven't we seen NFL players out there working out? I mean,
yeah,
we've seen plenty of workouts.
No, we just saw Tom Brady.
You're not getting ready?
We just saw Tom Brady on field with his teammates. We saw him on a golf course with some guys. Listen, Jason Tatum made a ridiculous statement, I thought, on the All the Smoke podcast, where he said he hadn't touched a basketball during the whole coronavirus thing. And I'm just sorry. If I was a Boston Celtics fan, I'd be like, oh, my God. Because I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm just talking about young men in general with wealth and means and opportunity. You get paid for playing basketball. I bet you if we went around and did a survey of NBA players, NFL players, Major League Baseball players, has their extracurricular activity slowed down in the bedroom? I bet you it hadn't. And I guarantee you that's more dangerous than going out and playing basketball and preparing for a basketball season.
Oh, my.
I'm just keeping it real. Uncle Jimmy's going to keep it even realer. He's just around the corner. We'll have our approval rating for LeBron James. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib. Happy Wednesday. Speak for Yourself presented to you by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. Let's roll out to Uncle Jimmy's crib and get his latest take on LeBron James. Dude, quit doing that. This is a family show. Quit doing that. You got to take on LeBron James.
Hey, man, I sure do, man. Look here, man, let me ask you a question. How in the hell am I going to be mad at LeBron James for doing the exact same thing that I told y'all day one that I was going to do? I told you I was going to continue having my private group workouts for the blue M&Ms. I told y'all that, okay? Because I'm going to tell you something, man. Times is hard, okay? They talking about Uncle Jimmy might have to start back making house calls. They talking about he might have to work on his bedside manner. You understand what I'm saying? See, I'm like LeBron James. We got to get this thing back. We got to get the NBA back on the court. And I'm going to tell you the truth, bro. Corona be damn, all right? We know what we facing. We know the risk. Some people might get sick. Some people might die. But you know what? How about looking at the bright side? That's what we got them big old locker rooms for. Take the people in there, pile them up, and guess what you do? You say the next man up. You know why? Because that's what we do as Americans. And that's just a small price that we willing to pay for our freedom. I don't see what the hell the problem is. Can you tell me what it is?
Pile them up.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot of problems in that, but I'm not touching it. My approval rating for LeBron didn't change. The internet has him at GOAT status. I disagree. We'll see you tomorrow.